welcoming back Mark. I can't see where he is, actually. I'm hoping he's in the audience. All right, very good. Welcome back Mark Hahnel to Repository Fringe, because, and I'm sure many of you already engaged with him in some enjoyable or perhaps even useful conversation during the last 2 days or so. Well, the last time he was here, we've established, was in 2011. And then he was a postgrad student with a really bright idea that he started to implement in various ways. And then I think you told me that your next month you had to finish your PhD and make sure that was in and lodged and the rest of you go. And then after that, of course, then that's when FigShare was laid down. And I think we should say it's not just, and the rest is history, but I think we're all clear that actually it's most obviously the beginnings of a remarkable future. And later on, I've got a badge to give you, which I got given at another conference, which I think you deserve. But while I have the floor, and rather than attempt to ask the first question, I'd like to make a small announcement, take the opportunity, that this academic year, 2013-14, it'll actually represent the 30th anniversary of the start of Edinburgh University Data Library. We don't know quite what to do with that 30th anniversary, but it's in some sense, although, as you know, Data Library is now part of EDINA and very much involved not only in this repository Fringe, but also research data management with Mantra, etc., and the new ideas of a data repository with some data share projects earlier on. But what I've found interesting when reflecting upon this to some extent is that the reason the data library came into being in the early 80s was because leading researchers in the social science and agricultural faculties here wanted someone centrally to take care of their big files. But also, and they were called big files, and you know, we called them big, but they probably wouldn't be regarded as big now. They're probably on your thumb drive or even smaller than that. But they were also keen to have a systematic way of getting data from other researchers or from government agencies so that they could use that as evidence in their own research and perhaps also with data sets in teaching. So the drive there was for access rather than particular for the compliance of deposit. And I think that still continues. I think that's still there, and that's something we need to think about how to blend in, is the wish to carry on secondary analysis of data generated for other purposes by some third parties. And the significance of that, obviously, is that there are some groups around, typically through iAssist for social sciences, and data libraries scattered around the place, where they have these debates, I think, on the extent to which they should act as digital shelves, and the extent to which the data that sits on those digital shelves should just sit there or should be curated in some ways to improve their usability. Now, returning to my brief, and I hope that isn't the first question, but clearly these are the things that you address, and the very welcome opportunity, I'm reminded of an email I got from Robin Rice, or rather she had earlier, for Repository Fringe 2011. And one was in correspondence with Mark, inviting him to the Repository Fringe, and which remarked, "We are a fan of FigShare here at the Data Library, and I wonder how it would take off vis-a-vis other Web 2 scholarly communication apps." And later after the thing, she wrote to the list, FigShare could be the new killer app for data sharing. Well, there's an understatement, I think, yes. Well, all of us here, we're very keen to learn actually what you've made of those last 2 years and what you've been doing and what you think. I think now you've become almost a household name within the researcher center world and publisher world, what your plans are for the future. So welcome, please, Mark.
First of all, wow, that was a bit much. Second of all, I appreciate I'm last up, and This is distracting because there's people walking past on stilts and things, and Graham's actually talking to people as they go past. So I'm going to get, because this is the last session and everyone's been so patient, I'm going to gauge everyone's, how they're doing. I'm going to run this like a bit of a Pecha Kucha. I'm going to talk that fast, but try and be add a layer of clarity. But I'll judge however many people are looking out of the window as how fast I need to wrap things up, because it is Friday night. So yeah, I was here in 2011. I'm going to kind of talk about what FigShare is. For those of you who don't know what FigShare is, I'll give a brief little intro and a brief demo. And then it's kind of just addressing, we all have similar questions. I mean, the difference here being, who here is associated with an institution? Pretty much everyone. And who here is associated with a library? So a load of people here as well. So I'm not. And so we're doing similar things, but we're in different spaces. But we have very similar questions. And this is me just thinking how I think we should answer these questions, but I could be completely wrong, so please feel free to critique as much as you want and shout out mid-talk or anything like that. So the talk I'm going for is, it's not just about open or closed, it's about control, and hopefully that'll make sense for those of people who are open, open, open. I'm also very open, 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 so don't chastise me just yet. So FigShare is a system where basically you upload your research, and then you can, if you make it publicly available, it's openly available under Creative Commons licenses. If you don't, then you can still manage it somewhere. You can still access your research from somewhere in the cloud. And this is kind of the bit that's developed a bit since I was here 2 years ago, and I was still a researcher. And this is the private side of things, because as much as we want people to be making their stuff available openly online, as you all know, there's lots of reasons why people won't do that. So we can't just ignore it, and we can't just be saying, oh, this is why our repository is great. You've got to look at the things why it's not great and try and address that. So on the public side of things, we have this citable, shareable, discoverable kind of thing. That's the core goal. That has always been the core goal. We're quite lucky in that it's still what we're trying to do while also working on the other side of things. So citable is quite a simple thing. It's a very simple hack to do. Everyone does it. Just make everything available with a DOI. Shareable, people can share on social media. Discoverable is a tough one. I'll come back to that in a minute. This is just some general housekeeping about things. In case you were wondering what systems we play with on FigShare, it's cloud-based. It's all on Amazon Web Services, triple backed up. We're a launch partner with ORCID, so you can sync your FigShare research outputs into ORCID and pull the papers into your profile. As far as I know, we're the only place you can put stuff that isn't papers into ORCID with. So that's quite interesting. We adhere to traditional publication ethics through COPE, although we don't consider ourselves a publisher. We don't do any peer review. I'm not going to. We get our DOIs from DataSite, so we adhere to the DataSite conditions for metadata. And we're backed up in clocks, which mean the controlled lots of copies keep stuff safe. So if America floods, the data will always be there. If FigShare disappears, those DOIs will always point you to the object that you've uploaded onto FigShare. So when we first started doing this is what I was saying 2 years ago when we were just getting off the ground. This is kind of what we wanted to do. Dissemination of content on the internet is pretty much solved. If you want to share videos, if you want to share music, if you want to share images, YouTube, Flickr, SoundCloud, it exists. It's easy. So instead of seeing what the problem is and going backwards, you should see what the problem is, how other people deal with that, so dissemination of content on the internet, and copy them. And I mean, all of them have very similar things in common. They all make the content visualizable in the browser. Academia, for some reason, likes the idea that you download videos and open them. I've never, ever done that in my life, but it exists in a lot of academia today. So what we do is we just deal on making lots of file types visualizable in the browser. We have people just working on that. And I'll show you what that looks like now. This will be demo number 1, if it'll let me. I'm going to jump between the internet and hopefully, yeah, it works okay. So this is FigShare's site. Anybody who hasn't signed up, go and sign up for free. I'll try not to be too pitchy. This is what an output page looks like. So this is a poster. FigShare is confusing. It's not about figures. It takes any research outputs. Originally, it was figures, data sets, and videos. But then other people came along. If you do an open platform, people do whatever the hell they want with it. People upload research grants. People upload posters, presentations. And so we've added types for that. So this is a poster. You can see the content is always displayed here on the left. The author who uploaded is there. He's added some simple metadata. Here's the reference with the DOI. You can see this one has been shared quite well on social media. Something we just added, actually, is this embed functionality. That's something that YouTube does quite well, you know. If you've got some content, upload it onto FigShare, embed it onto your website. And you can embed it. I'll show you an example of what an embed looks like in a second. But it's just, you know, you can choose the size, you embed that iframe, you're good to go. But there's lots of different types, as I said. I'm just gonna, and I'll leave that for now. So here's some stuff that's been uploaded today. Let's click on this one. It's a data set. I'm pretending like I haven't just looked at this 2 minutes ago and found a good example. So data sets, you know, should be previewable in the browser. This is a custom-built Excel viewer, which, you know, works with tab view and everything like that. Because if you've got a 2 gigabyte data set, you want to see what it looks like before you download it. If you download it and then you're like, oh, it's nothing what I thought it was going to be, that's annoying. And the whole idea is if you're getting to big data, then you should be uploading it onto the internet and people should be building the tools on top of that. They shouldn't be downloading it into their system. It's all going to be web-based in the future. So that is what we do with data sets and different things like this. As I said, there's an author profile page here. He's got a couple of uploads. What we do here is we focus on the idea that the more things you upload, you get this score in the corner. That's not a great score, obviously. But the idea, we see a lot of people tweeting saying, I got 10,000 views on FigShare. And we're about to start turning on notifications if you want them when you get lots of views. And people tweet all the time, I've just gone past 5,000 views on FigShare. Because it's all about incentives. Why should I share my research? Why aren't people uploading research? It's because you have to give them something. You have to think of it as who are the people who are involved in this research. So that score, the cumulative score, is quite simple here. He's got 50 views for that one, 25 views for that one, 75 views in total. But what we're trying to do as well is the other side of incentivization. So what can we do to incentivize people? What can we give them back straight away? So metrics is one thing. Another thing is the idea that we will take your research and we will do something cool with it. So we're doing this in a couple of ways. This is just exploratory at the moment. This is actually a blog post, so it's not brilliant. But this is some research that's on FigShare. This is what the embed looks like. As I said, you can cite it. So it's some Wellcome Trust funding outputs from Cameron Nayland. You can see there's a CSV. There's, if we just have a look at what the actual graph he uploaded looks like, it's a graph, but it's a ping. You can't do much with that. So if you go back to the blog post, what we did was just take the CSV file and see if we can do anything cooler with it. You know, and D3.js, pretty simple, but his whole graph, his whole diagram, his whole ping had loads of research data, but he only showed like these 3 lines. So you can't really dig into it, but you can if you just, you know, scroll down, see what's going on. You can actually zoom. You can get rid of all plots because plots just warps everything and see, you know, what are the trends elsewhere. So they're going up. They're doing okay in terms of open access. The other thing we did with his research data was just, you know, add little things so you can filter and see, well, that's hockey sticking quite well. That's open access. Another way we're looking at doing things in incentivizing people to give back is if they upload a data set, then we'll do some quick research on it and say, here's a t-test. So you get some instant return on your upload. This is another thing we're looking at, which is moving towards interactive research. And I'm going to reference that we work with publishers in a second, and I'd like to hear your comments on that. But this is just something that you can change the things here, and it changes the molecule down here. I have no understanding. Peter can probably tell you what that is, but it's a spinny little molecule. So we're looking at ways to make the research data more interactive and move beyond PNGs. Go.
Is this existing FigShare features, or is this things that are coming up?
These are things. This page is live, this one here. So this exists now, but the guy got in touch and said, can you do this? Because if you're dealing with executable code, then we have sandboxing issues, so this is a manual thing. But the reason this is because this is going into a journal, so we did that especially for him. But it's just about if we can get use cases, then we can develop in certain areas, and I think that's the way we're going to do it, develop certain functionality for the ones who use FigShare the most. So ecology is one of those that use FigShare the most, so we're looking at that to start with. So we are a commercial company. We do everything. Every user who goes and uploads research can go and make it available for free. It'll always be free. Peter, if you could hold on to the end with your questions about that, because I know Peter has them. But this is an example of what we do with publishers. So this is the whole idea that it's a pretty simple thing. Publishers we visualize content really well. We visualize loads of files. I mean, it's not that hard. But publishers don't. So this is supplemental material in PLOS, and this is what it used to look like. Figure 1, Figure 2, Figure 3. Oh, great. So I'm supposed to download 17 files. I don't even know what they are. They tell you at the bottom, that's a TIFF. So we just put this widget in for them, and you can, yeah, it's an image, great, that's an image. But you can look at it in a list view, or you can shoot it up and see what's going on. You see all the ones on the left here, and you see, oh, there's some videos. They expected you to download the video. Just play the video. That's how the internet works. So we sell them these things. We work with publishers to help improve, to add functionality for them, and that's one of the ways in which we can make things free for individual users. This is another publisher we work with, which I think is really cool. This is an article in Fact of 1,000 Research. This is probably my favorite article in the world. I don't know what it's about, but what's really cool is you click on the graph, and the data set behind the graph pops up, which is pretty cool. The raw data is there. And that's without mandates. That's just because the guy thought it was really cool to have his data behind that graph that you're always questioning. Why has he done this? Why is he... That is the future of research. That is what should be happening. The data behind it should be made available. So if I go back, that's my first diversion onto the internet, but we'll be back. So I mentioned... I mentioned this citable, shareable, discoverable. This discoverable thing has been the bane of my existence for a while because until the beginning of this year, because for a good year, people said, well, discoverable is just a buzzword. We don't know that it is actually discoverable. And I say, well, we index pretty well on Google, and Google Scholar picks up our stuff, and it's like, well, it's all hearsay. But then DataCite, who we get our DOIs off, who probably some people here get their DOIs off DataCite, they started tracking of all the DOIs that they mint for institutions, for FigShare, for other repositories, for publishers, which ones were getting clicked on the most every month. And it was really nice, because in January they found that 8 out of the top 10 was FigShare. In February it was 7 out of the top 10. In March it was 9 out of the top 10, and then they stopped doing it. Discoverable. So when we're talking about questions and problems and how are you getting people to use this, and what is the problem that we're having with institutional repositories at the moment and where we're going, this is, as I say, I'm always using this from my own perspective and kind of asking people what they think. But why do people use FigShare? So you don't have to read them. I'll come back to these. But there's a few reasons why people use FigShare. So the future of repositories, who cares? This is more to do with the idea that when I turned up yesterday, somebody was saying, we've been doing this for a while. We're still having problems. Should we just give up? What's the problem here, Who are the stakeholders? What do they want? Are we answering their questions? And it's who takes ownership of this problem. So there is a problem. And who is taking ownership of this problem right now? The funders, institutions, or academics? They're kind of the three stakeholders for me. People could probably come up with more. But I'd say that the people who have taken control of this problem is the institutions, more particularly the library. And this is because, I mentioned this before, librarians are badass. For those who don't believe that, I truly believe that librarians are badass. My friend just sent me on new swag bags. So the idea that librarians are the renegades, they're the ones who actually change things within institutions. I'm sorry I couldn't bring these, we only got them today. But, so the idea is that libraries have taken ownership of this problem, but should the funders be taking ownership? Are the funders taking ownership? Are the academics taking ownership? Well, if we look at the real problem here about what's going on the data side of things, so this is not the open access side of things. This is a figure from Nature. 67% of researchers said lack of access to others' data is a major impediment to scientific progress. So the funders are coming out and saying, yeah, we're changing all that because of these ideas, because we're here for the researchers. No, they're not. They've spent the money. They want all their data. They're allowed to do that. So this is what's happening with the NSF in America. As of January this year, they're going to be measuring academics not based on publications, but based on products. So they're saying, we're going to be measuring you based on all of your research. So they've taken a bit of ownership of the problem here. They've said, you know, this is a problem, and we're going to do something about it. What are we going to do about it? This is lots of different funders I'm going to go through here now. So NSF, share with other researchers primary data supporting materials. NIH, timely release and sharing of data. Even the humanities, rapid data distribution. On the other side of the pond, we've got Neelie Cruz, who's saying, you know, we're going to be saying that this is something that's got to be done. Also, we're going to be telling national funding bodies to do the same. So big funders, the EU. And you'll notice that people are starting to delegate. They're not really taking ownership of this problem. They're saying there is a problem, and we'll push it down through the system. So Neelie's passing it on to the UK funded, well, the country-based funding bodies. So if we look at the funding bodies, this is DCC. Thanks for that, DCC. Saves a lot of time. And it's saying the more green a circle is, the more that problem has been solved by the funder. So, you know, they have policy. Yeah, you should be doing something. There's a problem. Let's deal with it. And then if you go to the right and you look kind of, actually, who's taking care of the costs, the repository, and the data center, there's some green circles, you know, that's good. And, you know, Wellcome Trust is now mandating that if you haven't made your research data available, they won't give you the last 10% of your money. That's mandates. That will make a difference. But then there's still a problem here, like what do you do with it? It's being passed down a bit. So this is all on the institutions now. The institutions have this, you know, and there's the top three of the ones I was referring to before, you know, research integrity, legislative change, and funders' data policies. So this is now being passed on. But what about the other people involved in this, academics? Again, I only have a personal view on this. So this is a photo taken after my last talk here. I was still in the lab. And what was I doing when I was in the lab? I was generating data. And I was thinking I was changing the world by generating loads of data. And, you know, after a few months, I had loads of things. This is just graphs. There was lots of stuff that went behind these graphs. And in the course of my PhD, I generated 9 gigabytes of data. So we're talking about like 3 gigabytes of data every year. I think there's 10 million, I know this is a midpoint, there's probably people with loads of data, I'm thinking I'm in the middle of the curve here. So there's 10 million academics around the world, we're talking about 30 million gigabytes, or 3 petabytes of data every year that's getting generated. So if you just think about my 9 gigabytes, how much of my 9 gigabytes can you guys get your hands on? Well, I've got 3 papers out, they've got 5 static images in them each. That's a few hundred kilobytes, it's not 9 gigabytes. But the idea is kind of, well, you can't just say open, 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 because I, for one, as I say, in September, it was 2 years since I finished my PhD. Can anyone here read my PhD thesis, even though I'm the guy preaching that you should be making your thesis available? Not until September, because my boss put it under embargo. Fair enough, I understand that. So, but my thinking is, though, that that thing will be put into the cloud and everybody will be able to access that in the not-too-distant future. And there's lots of reasons to do this. I can go into, you know, negative data, but I'm preaching to the choir. So I set up FigShare, and I put my data online for these other reasons, you know, moral and ethical obligations, you know, you can help promote your research, raise your profile. Sharing, this is the classic one, sharing detailed research data is associated with increased citation rate. Thanks to Heather Pivovar for doing that 6 years ago, and I'm still quoting it. Simplicity and visualization is cool in the format I produced it. So that is cool, and that was why I started it. Basically, it all comes down to egomania. When you're looking at the academics level, what their problem is, it's, I've got to separate myself from every other researcher. How am I going to do that? By having an impact, by shouting about my research. And that's what I thought it was. And then, as time went on, I started to realize that that's not the only issues at play here. This is an email I got this year, 2 years after finishing. Mark, I really need your data. It's important your data gets published. When do you plan to come in? I need you to print out the Excel files for all the experiments that you will use to generate the data in the figures for the paper. So this is for my paper that's coming out. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, because back when I was in academia, we didn't really have a research data management plan. And even today, what's a research data management plan? It's a plan to do something. But you've got to come up with a plan. It's not like we're providing you, it's like, we have a problem, make a plan. What's the middle bit? So, and I didn't want to, you know, it's anonymous because I don't want to reveal who it was. But my old boss there, she made me come in 2 years afterwards because she thinks I still work for her. that's where data usually goes missing, because why would you ever come back? And if I lived in San Francisco, I'm not coming back to print off some Excel files. And the poor guy who gets the research after me, does she really expect, is she going to hand him printed off Excel files? What am I going to do with this? It's got 1 million data points in it. Just copy them back in, it's fine. Academia. So this is my whole point. It's not just about open or closed research data. You need to take everything into this. Again, I'd like to stress that I do want to make everything open, but we need to think about this in a logical way. And we need to address what the problems are so we can make a change. And the change is, it's all about control. If you look at Facebook, Facebook came along, everyone was like, wow, Facebook's amazing, let's throw everything on. And then it's this whole Cory Doctorow thing that the further away you are from a problem, the less you think about it and the more you'll give up. So you'll give away all this research, your photos and things, and then you're suddenly like, oh God, my friends are losing jobs because they're showing up on Facebook wasted. You know? So then you suddenly like, I'll pull it back in, I'll control my privacy settings. You can do that. If you have control over that, as you do with Facebook, everyone understands Facebook, you're going to use it. So going back to what the stakeholders think, this is the whole idea of if there's a problem, why don't we ask people? Because they can tell us what they think, and we saw surveys before, hearing what the librarians thought. So if we look at academics, this is what we asked academics, and this is what they kind of told us. You know, what's in it for me? Is it hard to use? Will it take up my time? What do the funders make me do? That's important, because they'll jump through hoops if they have to. I want to share my research, but only with the people I trust. I want all of my research in one place, and I want my research to have more impact than anyone else's. So they have some demands there, you know? One of them is what do the funders make me do? They're still scared of the funders, so that mandate will help. And that is something that's really important this year as the mandates are coming out. But if we just go and show what our thoughts are on how we can deal with this. So if I just go back to FigShare, if I just am I logged in? I log in. This isn't what a normal FigShare account looks like. This is what my FigShare account looks like. Normal FigShare account doesn't have these two tabs. And this is because, well, we thought, well, this is what FigShare looks like. You've got all these different files. You can see them, great. You can filter them. People can tag them up and don't have to make them publicly available. I tag some of my research up with a grant code. And that's something I prepared earlier. And, you know, I just want to see the videos under that grant code. And there you go. I can filter my research, and I can find my research. And if my boss wants to see the files from my research now, I can just send them to her. The problem is it's already a bit late. But what we can do now is have these things called, they're basically shared folders, where you can, you know, if you're a PI, you can have all of your students shave their research into a folder, like John's PhD research. And then when John leaves, I can still see what's going on. I can still access his research. I don't have to print them out. But, you know, people are using this for different things. You know, they're using it for certain grants. They're using it for reading lists, much like Mendeley do shared folders. And they're using it for, you know, group discussions. But you can share these with any other FigShare user, not just within your institution or anything like that. So that's that whole trying to address that shared ownership, and that I only want to share with the people I know. But then when you get to the point where you want to make it publicly available, you add a little metadata here, and you change private to public, push save, and you'll generate an output page like we just saw. So if you're that close to doing it, the idea is that we can nudge you into doing it a bit more. But if you've lost the files to begin with, you're never going to make them open 2 years later. If you upload them, add a bit of metadata, then you might make them available a couple of years later. So that's what we're doing with regards to closed sharing of research. And you can see, you know, who's been looking at all of your files. You can see how the projects are developing. So let's go back to here. And so, yeah, I'm going to go straight back to the internet. So this is, by the way, this is our designer's interpretation of a institutional library. It's basically a prison. So what are they saying? They're saying, how much data are we generating? Does anybody know how much data their university generates? Because they're like, well, yeah, there you go, one. First one.
Very few people know the answer.
Yeah, and that's because some of it's on thumb drives, chemistry have it in thumb drives, physics has it on internal servers, but they don't know where the hell it is, so they can't really count it. What's happened to the old stuff? how can we get our research reused more than any others, and I want to outperform other institutions in the league tables. So what can we do for them? Well, we kind of already have done something similar for publishers. If I go into this is by working with PLOS, they said, can you pull out all of our tables that are in HTML format and convert them to CSV? Can you, all of the supplementary material that you're viewing, can you make that available somewhere? So this, and all the figures, which is quite nice because we have some figures on FigShare. But, so we have 622,000 objects from PLOS. The main reason they do this as well is because it's really good for SEO. It's the publishers trying to drive people to their site. So if you have a object like this, an output, let's just look at this one. What we do is we say, this is part of a published article. And so we can drive the traffic back to the website. There's no better metadata than there's a published article written about this. And if you think, well, if there's 10 figures within a paper and you Google the title of that figure, you may find it in the paper, but because they're in Google indexes the title of the paper, it might not find it. Whereas if you have a page on FigShare that has every figure or data set, the title is the title. So you Google it, you find it on FigShare, and we don't want to keep them there. We want to push them through to the research article. So what we can do here is, we can filter on different journals within PLOS. We can show them, you can filter on, let's look at the most viewed videos in, biological sciences. That's on biological sciences. So you can filter down things like that. And this is essentially half of what the institutions want. This is a repository. This is a repository of research outputs. We take any file type. We take papers. We take posters. We take presentations. And you can imagine that would say, this is called plos.figshare.com. You can imagine it was called institutionx.figshare.com. And you could filter on department and say, let me see the most viewed videos in this department. What's also great about this is it has its own individual API. So you can come along and say, I want to see all the spreadsheet data from PLOS in the last 6 months. Pull it all out with these tags, something like that. And then what's the other thing that the institutions want is the stats. So we do track the stats. We track, this is how many views it's had just on FigShare, how many times it's been downloaded. We track other things as well, but this is just the PLOS view. You can search on specific authors. You can see where that traffic is coming from. You can zoom in on that too. And we don't just look at, countries. We track IP ranges of institutions. So institutions could say, I want to have all of my research outputs in one place. What is the impact of that research? And we can say, well, these videos from this researcher are having lots of impact. Embed it somewhere, you'll get lots of hits. People from Harvard are looking at it. We can get down to that level of granularity. At the same time, populating repositories is pretty difficult. We work with publishers. We can pull stuff from Nature now and pre-populate your institutional repository with the data sets that have been published in Nature because you know the association of every single author. So we can, all of those 600,000 objects on PLOS, we can filter down to an institutional level. So you get more impact, which is what the institutions seem to want. And so this is what our solution is at the moment on this side of things. It's not about open or closed. It's about control, but it's about research outputs management and research outputs dissemination. They're usually two separate things. The management one is kind of just make a plan. If you can put them both together, so an institution comes along and has a big space, so everyone who's at that institution gets lots of private space, they can make it publicly available, and we'll track the impact, and we can filter it all down for you like that. That's what we see as a repository. And because we love prisons, we're launching this FigShare for institutions. So this is just explaining, this is my one pitch of the day, what we're doing with that. You get this repository side of things, you get the statistics side of things. And people have asked before, what does it come down to? It comes down to, do we have enough metadata? We get asked that a lot, we get critiqued. And if you ever try and dip into metadata standards, it gets super, super ridiculous, super, super quick. And this is because, you know, people make up metadata standards and define it as their, you know, one person makes a metadata standard, somehow makes it into the standards list. So we're looking at it a different way, and if you build it, they won't necessarily come. But if you build an API, people will come and do cool stuff with it. And this is something that Henry Rezaper did at Imperial. So he's using the API. He's saying, FigShare worries about them making content available for free. We'll worry about our own taxonomy for metadata. And so he has this, which is live. Anyone can use it. And he will, you know, select categories, so he has a way for his students to adhere to the metadata standards. He has this file here, adds all sorts of links automatically into the bottom, so it's all linked up properly. And then, so if you separate it into two things and say someone takes responsibility for this, someone takes responsibility for that, you get to the point, well, so what's the point of the repository again? And institutional repositories. So I would argue that there's people saying institutional repositories have been going along for a while, and now, you know, there's a lot of people in the space who've been in it for a while. Is it moving fast enough? It's about to, I'd say, because it's now more important than it's ever been before. Institutional repositories came about because of open access. They came about when it was an idealistic approach and universities bought into it. Now in the UK, it's mandated. So we are going to see, as I showed, when we spoke to people, they said, if you mandate it, we'll do it, because we have to. So in a year from now, I guess that all these institutional repositories are going to be filled up with loads of cool stuff because people have to, which is really cool. On the data side of things and the other research output side of things, they might also start doing that as they're getting pushed to do things. And you know, the research data management plans say they have to do that. So that's where it's going. And this community builds cool stuff. This community, I didn't know about resourcing till yesterday. That's amazing. I want to use resourcing. The stuff that Peter was talking about and is in the hack break today, that's an amazing idea. And this is what I wanted to differentiate at the first point, you know, when I said, we are a commercial company, you guys are institutions. I think there's no distinguishable things there. We can work together. I'd like to help every single institution. I don't know if that's reciprocal, but I get to because you build cool things like resourcing. And so the one final question I have, I've got two last points, I hope I'm not going too over time, is do we need to go back further? Do we need to go back? Because why do people use Dropbox? Because you drag files into something and it stores it for you in the cloud. You can access it from anywhere. But still with FigShare, we have a desktop uploader. It's pretty basic. You drag your files in, they go onto FigShare. But should we be focusing on saving the files? When you save the files, should they go somewhere? Because otherwise, you'll come back 2 years later and you'll be like, I didn't add the metadata. I can't really remember what this one is. It's called use this one. No, use this one. I don't really know what that means. So this is digital science. I brought out this tool called Projects, projects.ac, and it's basically a file system. But it's a file system that does a few cool things. It kind of tries to nudge you into a way of thinking about when you save your files, adding some metadata. You know, just the way that nudging people to use iTunes. Pretty much everyone knows how to use iTunes, right? I remember the first time I used it, it was annoying. But the nudges you to do things because it gives you a little few things in return. You get a timeline view, so you can just look through and see all of your files as they've been added. And you can star things. It does version control. It does all these cool things in the background. And the thing that digital science did with this is, you know, it's pretty feature low at the moment. But that's the view, so you can just scroll through and see the ones you've added notes to, the ones you've starred. It's got full text search. And it's kind of like, well, it can do so much more. And when's it going to do so much more? But their way of thinking is just put it out there. People will complain. People will tell us what we need to do with it. And so that's what it does. That's a little video. And what's really cool about this and really cool about being, I like digital science. Here is an example of projects. Here is an example of projects. This is a test version. It's out now. You can go and get it. But this is an example of a test version. So you can see, this is what the timeline looks like. I can scroll through. And then, this is a cool feature they're adding. If you push that button there, it's not live yet. You saw something happen there. As I say, it's a test version. If I go back to my FigShare account, what was that file called? GNI14. Memorable. If I go back to my data, I have GNI14 there. So it's getting to the point where ideally that'd sync, but we're not going to, we're not going to do that straight away. We're trying to get there a step at a time. And it's just because I work in the same office as these guys that's what that does. There's no reason why that shouldn't push to institutional repository. There's no reason why if you upload to FigShare, it shouldn't push to your institutional repository. Because these cool tools like Resource Sync, because these cool tools like Sword have come out of this community, we can all do these things. And I think I have one last slide, maybe. Yeah, gave it away. So this is for Peter. Because I understand the argument that, it's a lot, if you make everything open, it's great. If you make everything machine readable, it's great. And that's what we believe in. That was what I believed in 2 years ago. I think we're fortunate that we can work with publishers. This is being filmed, so I won't say those nasty, nasty publishers. Everyone hates. But we can work with publishers to make it free for everybody, for the individuals to use. And because of this, in the first year, 200,000 files were made available that weren't available. That's pretty cool, for free, for academics. And basically, I don't have all the answers to Peter's questions about, his concerns that we're a private company, we're a commercial company because of Mendeley. But, we do aim to be 5-star open data research. I was seeing before, what Southampton have done to link all that data together and the cool stuff that comes out of that, because it's just the way things should be done. All of our stuff will only be available via CC0 or CC BY. Everything that's made publicly available will never be paywalled. I can say these things. Since day one, we've had the same ethos. We're just lucky that we've managed to find a business model that enables us to sustain our ethos. And so our basic take-home message, which I think we're all on the same page when we say open all the research. That's what we're trying to do. I think I'm a bit short on time, but that's Petra Kuchar and it's Friday night. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If anyone's got any critiques or anything like that, please come and critique and send me emails. If you're going to critique us bad, don't do it on Twitter, do it on email. But thank you very much.
Very, very many thanks. We've got enough time as we want to have for questions. Paul.
Very briefly, what is your business model? So,
those PLOS and Fact of 1,000 with the examples I showed, they pay us for the functionality. PLOS is more about visualization of research outputs. Fact of 1,000 is they want to have large data sets within their journals, within their publications. So, they have a business model for that themselves. If you want to put 10 gigabytes of data in a paper and tick that funder mandate box, because what else are you going to do with it? Then they will charge you a premium on top of what they pay us for the service. And the second thing that we're doing now, which is we've been working on, was the FigShare for institutions. So we are now doing institutional offerings to be announced next week, basically, but I've kind of announced it.
So thank you for giving me a slide, right?
That had all your answers. I can't believe you got any questions.
So first of all, I approve of FigShare. I think that this is the right way to go, but I have some qualifications, right? So first of all, I trust you completely. I do not trust Macmillan. I do not trust Elsevier. I do not trust Google. I do not trust Facebook, and so on. So in 10 years' time, I will say the same thing about FigShare, unless something remarkable happens. I'm not quite sure what that remarkable thing is, but at the very least, you have to build what we call organizational DNA that prevents you becoming evil, because you will become evil.
Me?
No, I'm talking about FigShare. You might leave. Suppose you left, right?
Yeah.
Suppose, for whatever reason, you left tomorrow. Who'd take it on? who'd be running it tomorrow?
If I died,
Probably-
it might go to my dad, and I'm not sure I trust him.
Right. But you
Yeah.
can see the point.
No, and I do see the point. I'd counter that, though, with a lot of this is kind of aimed at, well, it's costing us money. Yes. We are selling a product to institutions. We are, and I'm very open about that. We are selling a product to institutions. But the alternative is kind of, there's economies of scales. There's better way to do things. Services can operate without being evil. And, 2 universities I know of have built their own data repositories. They might be here. I heard one cost £2 million, one cost £1 million. That could buy a lot of everything else. So I understand that you're saying we need to keep our ethos, and we will try, we've been able to do that. We're lucky that we've been able to do that this far because we can keep the open side of things because of the way the business model developed. But at the same time, I think services can operate. Mendeley is still a free product. Mendeley is still very useful for lots of people. They might be using all your data. You don't know what Elsevier are going to do with that. Exactly. But for a lot of people, it's a useful product that costs no money.
And Mendeley have actually now got copies of every scientific PDF there by the process that Mendeley has. So Elsevier has access to the whole scientific literature, right, without ever having dealt with the other people. Now, I calculate that the value, that the cost of world research each year is about $300 billion, right? And much of that value is unrealized. So very soon, the value in FigShare is going to be at $100 billion in terms of the research investment that's gone into it, right? So we're talking about something where there'll be intense pressure to control and use it and so on. It could be, for example, that institutions want to find out what their staff are doing. You could use this to spy on staff when they put in data sets, when they don't put in data sets, what they're working in and so on, just as Google does, right? And so you have something of vast power with a vast amount of money involved with it. What I would say is the time is now to create a governance structure that addresses this problem before it becomes too late.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should probably let that question lie 2 steps away from, if you can't trust the banks, who can you? If you can't trust the Holy Roman Catholic Church, can you? So there are some fundamental trust matters in society, but this one has been lodged.
And you can trust the internet. When I say all the stuff that's made publicly available now under Creative Commons license will always be available, we had a conversation yesterday about if something's made available under license, you can go and say, well, I'm going to go and sell it. But you just use the Wayback Machine. It's available under CC BY. I'm going to take it and do what I want with it. So you can trust the internet to an extent.
Okay, so I think maybe at some stage, maybe next year or whatever, we ought to have an ethics discussion somewhere, which is not distinctly about FigShare, but is actually about natures of trust within institutional. What happens within the academy? What is the nature of that trust? But anyway, to move on, there must be another question. Well, okay. So may I just use this opportunity to award my... Oh, one, sorry, Kevin.
So this is about something I think you said you're about to launch next week, so you may not feel able to say that much about it. FigShare for institutions. And apart from an observation, perhaps this is one way to solve some of those trust problems. Having a contract with somebody binds them in a way that using something for free doesn't. To what extent, I presume you must have done some consultation with somebody about the nature of the offering and the nature of the contract that's going to be involved. Mm-hmm. Can you say anything about that process, the who?
Yeah, we have. We already have it with the publishers. We have a lot of liability. We take on a lot of liability that data is going to be available for X amount of time. And it's the same with the institutions. We have an awful lot of liability that is going to be secure, that is going to be private, that I can't just go in and look at it and, win my Nobel Prize. There's lots of things that we have to do legally to take care of that. But we're working with development universities. We've been working with certain universities to see what the needs are, and that is how we've got to the offering as it is right now.
Okay, so it's been with individual universities rather than, let's say, representative groups, of which there are many around the world.
Yeah, we went and spoke to a lot of people, mainly London-based people, but to make sure that we weren't going to stand on anyone's toes. We weren't going to, this isn't about, it's about building something. We all have the same goal. I think we can help with that. And we have development universities in different countries or different continents to help deal with that, to make sure that it's a more global solution. But yeah, that's why I say digital science is a good thing, because I've never done a business class in my life.
No.
So luckily they have.
Yeah, you need other people to do that.
Okay, well, before I award the badge, just to say, actually, I recall I'm a member of the board of Clocks, the Clocks board, because the University of Edinburgh is a member of that board and is one of the tickety-boo DEEC archives. And there is actually a contract, that's what triggered my memory on this. There is a contract that's made between all publishers, or each publisher, and in this instance, whether FigShare is a publisher or not, they are regarded, therefore, as a data source, that the Clocks organisation ingests everything that publisher makes available, or that organisation makes available, and the contract says that if there is a failure to deliver, in other words, that it ceases to be for one reason or another, and there are lots of different reasons we know that something could cease to be the service delivered, then Clocks has the rights to make those data or those objects that have been ingested available on open access platforms, of which there are two currently, one here in Edinburgh, EDINA does it, and one in Stanford, library does it there. And as and when that demand for release goes up, so we would, as a Clocks organisation, have more platforms in order to sustain whatever it is. So in terms of the assurance that what goes in can come out, by joining Clocks, you have done that. Mm-hmm. And the Clocks organisation has a contract which is supra government, in the sense that no one government can tell the Clocks organisation what to kill or not to kill, because it's distributed in the fashion that it is. And it is a contract that you have given up those rights, not for it, so it's closed as long as it's closed, and that's your business. Yep. But once you have ceased to deliver, then we have the rights to make that available open access.
And even better than that right now, I mean, if you're concerned about the content that's in FigShare and what's going to happen to it, the public side of things, through the API, you can literally pull every file out. You can mirror every single object if you'd like to. Yeah. The problems you'd face there is it costs money.
Yeah, sure. What I'm saying is that there is this assurance of continuity, which the Clocks does in that sense, like that. So, okay, so we will come to a close on this, but before we do, we're going to hand over to the wrap-up. But I would just like to hand over a badge that I acquired at the last IASIS conference, which has the words Uber Data.
Thank you.
And it's green.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thanks very much, Mark, for a really great way to end this year's Repository Fringe. I'm going to keep you long, just a few reflections on what we hope to get out of this, what we hope you've received in this. I mean, I think an event like this, there's at least three things we hope to do. We want to come here and share to some extent, whether it's sharing the work we've done, sharing the ideas that we might have, or indeed perhaps we're coming to share the problems we've got to which we don't have solutions and other people might have them, by collectively, in the way we've seen in the Developer Challenge and other things, we might collectively find answers that we can't find as individuals. We come to meet people, the ones that we know and the ones that we don't know about, and perhaps to make new connections. And hopefully we also come to learn. And some of us just come with one or the other of those objectives, and I think many of us come with all. I've certainly managed to get all of those things out of the event this year. Definitely I and my colleagues at the DCC, we've had the chance to share some of the stuff we've done. I hope you found some of that useful. I've met old friends and met many people that I've not done before, and I hope some of those connections will prove useful in future. We know there's lots of you who have not been to a Fringe event before. And I've learnt lots and lots of stuff, but a couple of things stick in my mind. One is that an entire room of supposed experts somehow can't quite work out how to put something into an ePrints repository, as we discovered as Chris was desperately looking for help. There are a number of different, up there, down there, no, that one there. Well, I think there's a lesson to learn there about the quality of some of the interfaces we offer to people, but we knew that already, didn't we? But there's work to do there. And the other, well, interesting idea I picked up from Les Carr as a way of, both maintaining open access and monetising what we do. And as a result of that, I, as part of the DCC's business plan for next year, I stressed that although many of the publications, indeed all the publications we produce like this, about how to set up a research data management service, are available under free CC BY licenses, there's also going to be a signing opportunity after this. Beautiful leather-bound copies of this will be made available, limited edition. And I'm sure that's going to secure our future for many years to come. So thanks, Les, for an idea that I hope perhaps we can all benefit from. And I hope all of you have managed to do some or all of those things of learning and sharing and meeting. And if you haven't and you think there are ways that the event could change in future to make that more possible, then we'd stress it's an unconference. It's yours as much as it's ours. It changes to meet the needs of those who come. So by all means, share your ideas about what worked and what didn't with us, and hopefully next year, Repository Fringe come in even better, and there will be a next year. I can stress that it will be an even better event than it was this year. One of the reasons I can say that there will be a next year is because of those who put the sponsorship behind it. I need to offer thanks to the DPC, Symplectic, ePrints, and various institutions here, the University of Edinburgh itself, Library and Collections, EDINA, the Software Sustainability Institute, and the Digital Curation Centre, all of whom put backing into this. And perhaps we can extend that happy network of sponsors in the future. But for the moment, at least, we put enough commitment in that we know there's going to be an event next year. But it's not just the sponsors. There's the people like the session chairs, the developers, those who've spoken at the event. Our thanks to all of them, and in particular to the organising committee here who make it possible. There's a huge amount of effort. I'm on their mailing list. I contribute nothing except occasionally offering an unhelpful opinion, but I know how much work goes into this, and a great deal happens and happens smoothly because of the effort they put in. There are two individuals in particular that we really want to single out. One who can't be with us today, Florence Kennedy, who many of you will have met yesterday. All of the committee have told me how much they depended on her. She's organised enough events that she's full of wise advice. But also Nicola Osborne, who's with us today, who's chairing the committee, particularly this year, in what's often a fractious set of meetings. So right, indeed. Yeah. So one of those is edible and one isn't. We haven't labelled them, but I'm sure you'll sort it out. Right. And so that's, and I'll just end then by saying thank you to all of you for coming here and making this event what it is. We love welcoming you here to Edinburgh. We hope many of you get the chance to enjoy the other things, the other distractions out there that Edinburgh has to offer, as well as the distractions that we try to offer you here in this room here. Thank you.